Hi guys, welcome to today's video. In today's video I'm going to be showing you how to make these cool procedural crystals and put together this little spinning crystal animation. You see there's quite a lot of depth to the image and everything is procedural. You can see the crystal here, but yeah, let's just jump right into it. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is delete the default cube, press Shift A, go to Mesh, and then add in a Ico Sphere. You can leave this on Subdivisions 2, put the radius down to 0.5, just to make it a bit smaller. And then in edit mode, with everything selected, so if it's not highlighted orange, you can just press A, then press SZ and just scale it up on the Z axis like this. So you see we've got our like faceted kind of crystal shape, and that was quite simple. We're going to do another, obviously the one in the center that's a bit more kind of like fluid looking. But we'll use this as the basis to get the shader set up. So with this, if we drag out from the corner here, just split the window, and then you're going to want to go over to the shader editor. I'll close this down. If you can't see the shader in the middle, you could just press and then with the shader editor open, we can click this button here to just add a new material, and we'll call this one Crystal Shader, just like that. Now to see this being displayed, we do need to go over into rendered mode, but before I do that, I'm just going to go up to File, Save As, and then I'll just save this in my tutorial projects folder. As always, if you want to get access to these tutorial projects, you can subscribe to my Patreon, and that includes a Google Drive link to this exact folder where you can have access to this file. The link for that is in the description below. So we'll just save that as Crystal Tutorial. Hit save, swap to Eevee, and then we're going to want to go to rendered mode. Now currently, obviously the world is just grey. There's just a kind of boring basic white shader on this. We're just going to want to change a few settings to make this look as nice as it can do. So the first thing we want to do is enable ambient occlusion, bloom, screen space reflections, including refraction. And then if we go down to color management, we can swap this from, keep it at filmic, and then the look here from none to medium high contrast will be good for now. And you could just see that it kind of makes everything a bit crisper, a bit darker for now. With this shader tab open, we want to go over to the world, and I'm actually just going to drag the strength down to 0. And then over here, I'm just going to press Shift A, add in a area light, just bring this up to sort of here, press 7 on the number pad to go into top view. Actually, let me just turn on my screencast keys, just so you can see what I'm doing. I'll scale this up. Move it. I'm just going to press double R to go into this trackball rotation. And I'll just tilt it to point at our crystal kind of here. Move it back. Just want to get this into position just to get a nice kind of glow on our shadow. And I'm going to press Shift D just to duplicate this. I'm going to press RZ to rotate it on its Z axis. I'm going to bring it down on the Z axis by pressing G and Z, and then I'm going to rotate it up to kind of look at it, and I'm going to press G, Z, Z just to pull it back on its own Z axis, the local Z axis, just to move it back. Just reduce the power a bit. We can tweak that as we need to, but for now that should be fine. I'm just going to press this button up here to disable the overlays. That'll just get rid of the grid, just so we can really focus on our crystal. Okay, then we want to swap back from world to object, select our object, and then we can get working on the crystal shader, and it's actually very deceptively easy. So what we want to do is we want to press Shift A to get a Musgrave texture, and then we want to press Shift A and get a Voronoi texture. Shift A, get a mix RGB shader, drag the height into color 1, this distance into color 2, move that back. We want to press Shift A again, get a color ramp, connect the color into the factor, and then the color from this into the base color. So you can kind of see kind of the preview of that and what that looks like. Now it's just a white and black kind of splodgy kind of look. And the way this is, what's happening here is these two textures are going into this color ramp, and these textures are values from black to white, and then depending where they fall, that's where it falls on this color ramp. So this Musgrave texture, if it's black, it'll be black here. What we can do is these black bits here, if we want to change them, we can change the color of the black over here on the color ramp. And you see we can bring blue into it, a bit of purple, green. So now you just pick the kind of color that you want your crystals to be. And I really like this kind of turquoise and magenta kind of color. So I'm going to click this handle, select my blue color, and then I'm just going to drag this in slightly, just to about here. And then for the white, I'm going to go for this magenta color, and then I'm going to just drag this over again, just to about here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to move over here. I'm going to turn metallic from 0 to 1, which technically makes this classed as like a metal material, which I know crystals aren't necessarily. I'm just going to go into object mode and turn on overlays. Sorry, not object mode, solid mode. I just want to brighten up some of these lights just to get a bit more of a shine on this crystal. Now there's actual color on it, it's quite dark. So that'll do for now. Okay, so now with our crystal selected, we turn metallic up. We can reduce the roughness slightly just to make it a bit more shiny. Then we can bump the transmission up to 1 and then leave the IOR at 1.45. So with this Musgrave texture, we just want to change a few settings. So the scale, we're going to bring down to 0.86. I'm going to put the detail to 2.5. And then dimension and lacunarity, we can keep the same. The Voronoi texture, we can leave as it is. And then if we go up to edit preferences, go to add-ons, and just make sure that node wrangler here, that's enabled. And then with the Musgrave texture selected, we can press Ctrl T to bring up a mapping node. And then we just want to swap this from generated to object. And then we can do the same here from vector, drag that over there. And I'm just going to swap over back to the world setting just for a second. I'm just going to bring the strength up just so I can see a bit easier. We'll drop that back down later. Go back to object. And now with the location setting of this mapping node, we can kind of change what pattern we see on this. So if we want the pattern to change slightly, we can do. So let's just get to a good kind of area like that. I'm actually going to go to material preview mode for now, just so I can see what I'm doing a bit better. If we use the location, we can get a nice pattern that we want. Like that's good. A bit more of a mix there of the pink and the blue. We can also play with these slightly, so if we want it more pink or more blue, we can do that. So I think that's good. I'm going to go back over to rendered mode, and then I'm going to, on the material tab here, just scroll down and hit screen space refraction. Okay, so I'm just going to tweak the settings just a little bit more on this. I'm going to press Shift A, add in a value node, and connect the value to the scale here. And all the value node does is, instead of setting each of these manually to 0.5, it'll set all of them to 0.5 here. So you see we're getting a bit more of kind of quite a nice soft look. We can play with this just slightly. Hold down Shift to make it not as sensitive. Again, I'm just going over to material preview mode just so I can see a bit more. You can click this button up here to get there. And then with the factor of this mix, if it's at 1, if the factor is at 1, it's all of this. It's all of color 2. If it's at 0, it's all of color 1. And if it's kind of in the middle, it's a mix of both. Here I've left it on mix with a factor of 0.267. So I'm just going to go over to rendered mode again. I think that's looking quite good. So now what we want to do is if we select out, I'm going to turn back on overlay so I can see what I've got selected. If I select the crystal and then press Shift D to duplicate and then immediately just click to drop it, you see that we've now got a second copy of this exact shape. And what we can do now is we can go into edit mode and then just scale this up slightly, just so it's bigger than the crystal inside it. And then we just want to hit this X here, and that's just going to get rid of the shader on the outside crystal. And then we're just going to make a new material, call this crystal exterior. And then for this material, we're going to press Shift A and get in a transparent BSDF. We're going to get a mix shader. Just going to drop that on there, but then plug it into the bottom one. Plug this transparent shader into the top one. I'm going to pick kind of a pale blue color. And then I'm going to turn the transmission up and then come down to the settings and turn screen space reflections on. I'm going to change the IOR to 2. And then I'm going to drop the roughness to 0. And then finally, I'm going to swap blend mode here from opaque to alpha blend. So you can see that we have our crystal and it's inside this glass kind of case. That actually might be a bit too thick. What we want is for it to kind of just give like a little bit of a, like it's a shell kind of, so it catches it sort of in the light there. Can you see like here, this double kind of effect? So here's our first gem. Okay, so now I'm just gonna rename these just so I can see what we're working with. So the outer shell, I'll call crystal underscore outer. And then the inner one, I'll call crystal inner. And then with the inner selected first, if you press Shift and then click the outer, so you'll see that now this is like a brighter orange and a brighter blue. So that means this is the active selected. What we can do is we can press Control P and then set parent to object keep transform. So now when we move the outer shell, the inner one comes with it. So I'm just going to press Control S just to save that for now. And then I'll just press GY, move it out of the way, and we'll come back to that later. Now, we have our shaders set up, but what we need to do now is get our kind of main, kind of like weird liquidy kind of looking rock in the middle. And again, that's very simple. If we press Shift A, add in a Ico Sphere again. And I'm actually going to bump this up to 3 subdivisions just to get a bit more geometry. And then under here, over here, under the modifier properties, we go from choose add modifier and then choose displace. And you see that it kind of enlarges itself a little bit. Over here, if we click new, this is going to make a new texture. And then we can just go over here to this little tab. We can see our texture here. We want to change this from image to Voronoi. And we can see that we've got our crystal here. It's come back, but it's very, very odd. What we can do is we can play with these settings and kind of get a look that we kind of want to get. Before I do that though, I'm going to go over to edit mode. I'm just going to scale this up slightly and then go back to object mode. And I'm just going to go over to solid mode just so we can see what we're working with a bit better. I think again, I'll go to object mode and I'm going to scale this up along the Z-axis like this. Go back to object mode And there we go, we've got our nice kind of weird shape. I'm going to right click and shade smooth, and then I'm actually going to press Control and 1 just to put a subsurface, just to put a subdivision modifier on that. Let's try 2. See, that looks a lot better. So this is a bit more of a kind of weird, smooth, crystally rock shape, almost like liquid. So if we go back over to our texture tab here, we can change some of these settings down here. So we can change the intensity. Change the size. And then in the modifiers setting here, we can change the strength. So if we want it to be our normal shape, we put the strength to 0. We can go up higher. We want it to be really strong. So I think I'll have it like that, but obviously play around with these settings, both here in the displace and here in the texture tab. You can try different noises if you want. You don't have to choose Voronoi. But I feel Voronoi gives the best kind of look for what I want, the shape I want. And then from here, it's just a case of, if we go back over to make sure we're in the object shader, from this little drop down menu here, click the crystal shader, and I'm going to go back into rendered mode. So this one's mainly just blue. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move our lights back. Now we've got this bigger crystal in the middle. Just going to scale them up. And then I'm going to change the mapping over from object to generated just to get a kind of that kind of look that we wanted. Play with the scale again. If you want to control these shaders independently, what you could do is we just undo that, put it back to how it was. So you can see that I like the way it is on this one, but this one is looking a bit it's mainly blue. We can duplicate the material on the bigger crystal, and then play with the settings independently. Obviously, if you change anything dramatic, you'll have to replicate the changes on the original shader. So I'm just going to change it over to generated because that gives the better look that I want. And I'm just going to increase the pink just to make the pink a bit more dramatic. And I think that's good because it's going to spin anyway in our animation. Okay, so once we're happy with the shape and the way the shader is looking on this, we can go over to our modifiers tab, and then if we just press apply on the displace, you can leave the subdivision there if you want to turn it off for performance reasons. You can leave that one on. And then we just want to press Shift D to duplicate, go over to object mode, and then just scale this up like this, just very slightly. You can hold Shift as you drag. Go back over to object mode. Down here, swap this to the crystal exterior. And now you can see that we have our crystal embedded inside the glass kind of case. I might just make this a bit smaller, just to like there. Okay, so now I just want to set up a camera. So I'm going to press Shift A and choose camera. I'm going to press 0 to go into the camera view, and then press Shift and then the apostrophe key. And then press Shift and the apostrophe key, and then just using WASD, we can fly our camera around. We can press Shift to speed it up. Just gonna fly it back out here to find an angle that we want. And then under the camera settings, I'm actually gonna under the output properties, I want to change this from 1920 to 1080 just to make it square. And then under the camera, I'm going to change the focal length to say 90. And that's just going to zoom it in a little bit, and then press Shift and apostrophe again, just to drag that back out. And again, just frame it up how we want. we're going to get a bit closer, kind of there. I'm going to turn on depth of field, and I'm going to get the pipette, and I'm going to choose the Ico Sphere as my focus target. And you can see if I pull this down, and then say move this crystal back, I'm going to choose the Ico Sphere in the middle as my target, and then under viewport display, I'm going to turn pass part out up from 0.5 to 1, and that's just going to get rid of everything outside of the camera just so I can focus more on what we're doing here. Okay, so now in the world tab, I'm just going to find my, sometimes, by the way, if you can't find your nodes, you can press A to select, just to make sure everything's selected, and then press period on the number pad and it'll zoom you over to them. With this background tab, I'm just going to make it kind of a dusky kind of blue color. You could go for a bit more of a pink color if you wanted, but I like this kind of very, very pale blue. And put this to 0.1. Go to the overlays. And then go back into the 3D viewport here. So now we can play with our lighting. So I'm going to go over to our render settings here, and under bloom, I'm just going to turn this up. And then I'm going to get our first light. I'm just going to really increase the brightness here just to get like a bit of a highlight over here. Maybe just expand that a bit. Now for this one, okay, where's our camera? So our camera's over there. So for this one, it's going to light up this side. Maybe make that a bit bigger. I want that to be a bit softer than this one, which can be a bit harsher. And then I'm going to press shift and right click just to move my cursor kind of to here. And then press shift A, add in a light. Bring in a point light. Make this not that big. Bring down the radius. Just make it kind of a good size. Bring up the power. And that'll just fill in down here. And then press shift D, duplicate, bring it up on the Z axis. Bring that over there. I'm just going to make these stronger. I'm going to change this point light here. I'm going to bring it directly over the crystal. I'm going to change it to a spotlight and have that shining kind of down. Bring it up. Increase the radius and the strength. Just going to really boost the power of these lights as well. So lighting can always be a bit tricky. What you want to do is you just want to play around in the different views, get kind of a look that you're happy with. Something else that's quite good to do, if you bring in a plane, so shift A, add in a plane. See, that's all the way down there. Let's press G and Z to bring that up. And what we want to do is we want to just decrease the size of the cone, get our plane, go into a view where we can rotate it and make it big just to block out that cone so we can see that the cone's hitting it. If we go up to Object and Edit mode, add in a couple of loop cuts just to get some nice squares in the middle. Once we've got our loop cuts in, we press A and then go to Subdivide again just to get a few more squares. Then in face select mode, go to select, select random. It'll select a good sort of portion of these, of the faces. And then you can press X, delete those faces, go back into object mode and then press Control 1 to add in a subdivision. And now you'll see what's happening is if we got our light and just hit show cone, see our cone's hitting it and it's only going to go through the holes because of obviously the shadows enabled. And what that does is it just creates a nice little pattern on the... It just creates a nice pattern to the light. So if we press G, move this, you can see that it's kind of uniform. If we put that back, it just adds some nice sort of shadows to the area. I'm going to go back over to the rendered properties, increase the... Just going to play with the threshold just to get a nice kind of glow to the crystal on the bloom. See down here, it's starting to glow a bit better now. I'm going to select our inner crystal, press shift and click our outer crystal. So that's the outer crystal is the active object. Press Control P, object, keep transform. So now we can move our outer crystal and the whole crystal will move. I'm just going to rotate it slightly, maybe scale them both up. Press Control A and apply that scale. And now with our crystal here, the smaller one, what we can do is if we right click and select hierarchy, that'll select not only the outer crystal but the inner one as well. And we can just go into this kind of top view mode with 7 on the number pad, press Shift D, and we can just duplicate this crystal around into kind of wherever we want, really. So I'm going to dot a few of these around and I'm going to rotate them, just change the kind of orientation of them. So I'll just speed through this bit. Okay, so once you've got those crystals kind of outside placed, what you want to do is you want to press Shift S and then put the cursor to the origin of the world. Press Shift A, add in an empty, and I'll go for a circle here. And you won't see it because it'll be inside the crystal. So if you just press Shift S and scale that up, and I'm going to press RX90 just to flip it. And then we want to get all of our crystals. Press G, move them just to make sure we've got them all. And then with Shift selected, Shift click the... And then holding Shift, click on our empty, and then press Control P, and then set parent to the object. So now all of our crystals are connected to the circle, and all of the inner crystals are connected to their kind of outer shell. So now we can rotate this, and our crystal, these exterior crystals will rotate around it. I'm actually going to get the camera, just scale it a bit so I can see it a bit better. I'm going to put this back down to 50 and then press Shift apostrophe in the camera view. I'm just going to fly this in a bit closer just to give it a bit more depth. From here, I might just move this crystal out here. And then I'm going to bring up a timeline, bring up a new window and go to timeline. At frame 1, I'm going to press I and then set the rotation, a keyframe for the rotation of our empty. Then I'm going to go to frame 250 and I'm going to press RZ359, press I, set a rotation, and then with both of these keyframes selected, so you can see that they're both orange, you press A, you go to T, linear, and as we play, these will spin round. They'll go all the way around in a smooth motion, and it'll be a perfect loop. Just notice that this is peeking in to the top corner. With our outer crystal here, I'm going to have this just rotate on its own Z-axis. I'll do the exact same thing. I'll go to frame 1, press I, rotation. But I'm going to have this spin the opposite way. So they're going around this way. I'm going to spin this one this way. So that'll be minus. So I'm going to go to 250 again. Press R, Z, minus 359. Press I, rotation. Make sure they're both selected. T, linear. So now that's going to rotate independently from the outer crystals. So that's great. I'm going to reduce the depth of field onto the crystal here, just to about 2. So now, as this crystal comes past, it's slightly out of focus. Okay, in the World tab, I'm just going to change the color of our background, just slightly. Make it a bit more of a deeper blue. And then I just want to add just a bit more light into the scene. So just above here. So I'm going to press, go into side view, press Shift D, bring up a light, scale it up, and make it nice and soft like that. And then the last thing I'm going to do with our circle, I'm just going to press I and set a location here. And then I'm going to go to frame 250, press I, set a location there. And then if we go to frame, say, 100, press GZ, move the crystals down slightly. Press I, set a location, go to frame, I don't know, 180, press GZ, move it up slightly, press I, set location, T, linear. See now the crystals kind of bob up and down and they loop quite nicely. And yeah, obviously you can duplicate as many crystals as you want, parent them to this empty in the middle, and that'll get you your little crystal, spinny crystal thing. It was a bit of a long one, but if you enjoyed that video, make sure you hit the like button down below. And subscribe if you want to see more content like this in the future. But for now, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!